All right, good morning, guys. So I am going to get back into the groove of doing my trade reviews. I took a break from the trade reviews. A lot of the trading days have just been really easy lately. Today wasn't too different. Was pretty basic. Wasn't easy because the contracts were chopping to hell, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But still ended up green, and the TA alerts that I gave after, if you took them, ended up green as well. So very solid day. But we'll start with the pre-market analysis. And here it was. Now, if I hop to the 15-minute, you can see I am bullish. I will hide this indicator. So I'm personally bullish, obviously. I mean, it's been validated most of the move. I am bullish for it to get to these nearby pivots. These yellow ones on ES and here. Now, I do have some other pivots that exist on this chart. I mean, I have this one here, this, a bunch on NQ, right? A bunch of the downside. But for now, it's definitely bullish without a doubt. It is a bullish chart. And I like this one here and maybe this one. There's a lot on NQ. There's a lot to choose from. So that's how I'm leaning going into the market, is bullish. Now, unfortunately, right before market open, NQ did get to this pivot here. So it's starting out with a potential bearish liquidity sweep. But yeah, definitely leaning bullish. However, what do we see here on ES? Oh, wow. We see a perfect quadruple bottom. At 6,300 flat on ES, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 touches perfectly to this level. That's great. You guys know, even just perfect double bottoms, I'm bearish from the break. But it's a quad bottom. Now, the points aren't super far apart. So it's not the hugest deal in the world, but it's definitely trade setup. If we invalidate a majority of this bounce, I'm triggered in 2 puts for that setup. Okay, so I have a couple of setups going into market open, which is great. You know, I always want options. Market opens, huge green candle, but we finished with a huge selling wick, so I don't enter. You know, I could have been triggered into QQQ calls there. The Nasdaq looked like it was stronger in the beginning, and this pivot is just above here. But finished with a huge selling wick. That invalidates I can't enter calls. But it did not invalidate. We bearishly swept this pivot. Now, this is pretty close to a put entry. We've almost invalidated a majority of the move. One more okay red candle, like a small red candle. And I entered during this candle before it closed. I actually filled my QQQ puts here, full size. And really the PT was, okay, here's the problem with this trade. I know NQ is pretty likely to get to here at the time I entered. I entered roughly up here. I entered early into the candle. I didn't wait for it to close on purpose. It was pretty much a 1-to-1 risk reward. I knew NQ is very likely to get to here. Here's the problem, though. ES is a hell of a lot stronger than NQ. And while I am bearish for ES to break this low, I'm only triggered into that bearish bias if we invalidate more than 50% of this bounce. Really more than 61.8%, right? I want to see it under that fib. Until then, I am one green candle away from being bullish. Because what will we have? We'll have a fractal cup and handle. And fractal just means like janky. Okay, it's not perfect. But if we get one green candle invalidating most of this pullback, I'm now bullish for all these points up here. And that's a problem because, as you can see, compare the sizes of these red candles. NQ had a huge red candle, ES had a very small one. ES is a lot stronger than NQ. So I do really believe that NQ is going to get to this level at the minimum, but I don't know if ES is also going to want to go down. ES may just want to handle, you know? So I entered the trade full size because it's still a nice stop loss, and it's easy for me to be confirmed out of the trade and into SPX calls, because if ES gets to here, that's exactly what's going to happen. But I do have to trim fairly heavy. You know, a little more than half size is what I did at that first PT. Because of that, right? That was a little bit more complex today. Well, we hit the price target, and I trimmed. I got a nice 22% for roughly half the position size, a little bit more. And now ES, now it's invalidated the 61.8. So it looks pretty good. I could enter SPX puts, but I decided to wait just a little bit because NQ put in a buying wick on a pivot. Now ES is putting in a bouncing candle. And then we put in this buying wick on ES. Now you guys see the potential head and shoulders forming here. Well, I still have QQQ puts left. I'm letting the rest, I have a pretty much a hard stop loss right around my break-even area, like right here. And as far as my next NQPT, I don't really have one. My next PT is this ES 6300 break, okay? Now, if you look at these candles here, NQ's been weaker, but now it's in demand. It swept the pivot. It makes sense that NQ would flip stronger, and it looks like it did. This candle, despite all the other candles being weaker on ES, except this one, NQ had a green candle, ES had a red candle. The strength is flipping. Now, all I know is I need to be exposed to puts. I need to be exposed to the short side for this move to here. That's what I want. So I'm like, all right, if this buying wick invalidates on SPX, I will enter a fairly light SPX position. It was roughly half size. And it was half size because I still had almost half of my QQQ puts left. And that's what I did. The next candle opened, invalidated most of this buying wick, and this was the trade. Unfortunately, the candle closed right after I entered with a huge buying wick and green. ES flipped strong, and then hell started. These puts chopped terribly. I entered the trade at 2.75. I didn't think the fill was that bad. Maybe it was about 10 cents too high, maybe. But these puts chopped bad. You think I would be green here? I was just under break even right here. It was really bad chop. For whatever reason, no one had faith in the bearish bias, and everyone was selling their puts because the IV was dropping on the puts, even during these drops. So I was red pretty much the whole trade. When I saw that, you got to trim your trade to break even. You have to de-expose yourself to risk. You have to de-risk, right? Lessen your exposure to risk, because if you've only been in the trade for 3 minutes and it's moving your direction and your contracts are not gaining value, that means everyone's selling against your bias, right? Everyone's selling their puts, which is dropping the IV. It's far too risky, and that's what I did. I trimmed a break even here, so bring the position even lighter. Not a super heavy trim, but a decent one. We popped back up. NQ is putting in a nice bear pennant, which is bearish consolidation. NQ looks great for this pivot, but ES, it's making lower lows and bouncing. This is bullish price action, and at this point, I'm considering SPX calls. Look how much stronger ES is than NQ. If I stop out of this, I'm going to be in calls. But we put in a selling wick. NQ puts start chopping now. QQQ puts start chopping now. I trimmed roughly here at 61 cents. I entered at 50. I entered at like 50 cents, 51 cents, something like that. I trimmed there for 22% gains. Okay, roughly 20% gains. The lowest these got right here were 60 cents. So they were more expensive here than they were right here. So it wasn't just the SPX puts that were chopping. QQQ puts were chopping too. It was rough. It was really rough. And after this trim on SPX, if I ended up stopping out of SPX, I would be pretty much break even on the day. But if I didn't take that trim and I stopped out, and keep in mind, the odds were very high of me stopping out. I fully believe 80% chance I'm going to stop out, and I entered those puts at 2.75. I'm probably going to stop out at like 1.8. Even though my stop loss is not far away at all, the contracts are going to hell. They are just absolutely getting shredded. The IV is decaying a ton for whatever reason on them. So if I didn't trim, I would have flipped this day fairly red. But because I trimmed, it was already half size. Trimmed it, now it's a quarter size. All right, my day's still going to be pretty much break even / slight green maybe because that QQQ trim. We'll see where the NASDAQ goes. It looks like NASDAQ's going the right direction. Anyways, I'm preparing to stop out, but we come back down, and this hits my stop loss to the tick. Obviously, since I'm trading options, I have a little bit more discretion, so I didn't stop out there. I was close to entering calls on this candle here, but what I said, and I quote, I really need to see how it tests the high of this selling wick. Because what do we have here on ES? A potential head and shoulders forming. And what happened? We swept this high and formed a head and shoulders. So right here, it is beautiful. Finally, the QQQ contracts are back up to like all-time highs or high of day, right? They were above 60 cents. I was still down like 20% on SPX puts right here. On this candle, my average was 2.74. I entered here. The highest at the very tip of this candle, I see it because I have the options chart on my Thinkorswim as well. The highest this got to, or my entry was 2.75. The highest it got to was 2.74. I am pretty much at PT, and it's not moving. It sucks. It really sucks. And I'm still holding my QQQ puts because I'm waiting for ES to get to PT. But by this point, I'm turned off from trading. It's frustrating. You know, I've been in this trade for almost 15 minutes now. It just battling. Like, I'm just waiting to stop loss. I'm just waiting to find out how big the loss is going to be because the puts are chopping so much. And when you're in a position like that, it kind of just drains your patience. So by this point, I'm pretty turned off. The NASDAQ is running nicely, though. I am decently little green on the day. But finally, when ES hits PT, by the way, it misses PT again, but then it goes down. And then it hits. Right when it hits, I sold everything. I did say NQ looked great to continue down, but we were experiencing so much chop that I just couldn't. So I personally took a little over 100% gains on QQQ puts, and I got like 6 or 7, maybe 8% gains. I don't know. It was less than 10. I know that. I filled my SPX puts at 2.9. Okay. Now, they did eventually end up getting higher, but there is just way too much risk. We're chopping down, right? We're chopping down, making lower lows, sweeping on with buying wicks and volume spikes. This is just too risky. I can't really hold it. So, yeah, I sold NQ, sold ES, and that was pretty much the end of my day. Now, I did say, feel free to continue holding NQ. Looks great to go, but I'm just turned off. I just want to lock in my gains and leave because it's just frustrating. But it is nice to know that pretty much the entire market bet against you, or everyone that was trading SPX puts, because those things were getting fried. Everyone was selling them. It is pretty nice to see like everyone bet against you, then you're correct, and then everyone ends up FOMOing in later. So that's pretty cool. The SPX puts did get to like 3.4 for like, I don't know, 20, 30% gains. The QQQ puts end up sweeping all my pivots, and they got a little bit over 250% gains if you held. Keep in mind, look where we bounced. Again, after sweeping a beautiful pivot. That's why I chart these lines out. Right, pivots are great. If you don't understand liquidity analysis, DM me, and that will change. But it is fantastic. So, I did hang out for a bit, and I said, all right, we swept liquidity. Everything looks great. I'm going to be done trading personally because I got stuff to do, and I'm just turned off from trading. It sucks. But if we get roughly to here, I'm bullish for ES to get both of these pivots. Why? Well, because we are flagging, and we have a lot of liquidity sweeps, and ES has been strong. This is actually a descending broadening wedge. So I sent out this TA alert. It's a great setup. You got triggered in on this candle, I believe is what it was. You can look in my channel. And you would have been stopped out. 1.5 risk reward. You would have stopped out on this candle for a loss. Now, keep in mind, if you stop out, that doesn't mean you're wrong. It doesn't mean it was a bad trade. That's just what happens, right? Who gives a shit? Don't be a baby about it. But one thing I did say in my channel is if it comes back up, it's even more likely than it was previously to work out. That doesn't mean you can't honor your stop loss, which means if you're unwilling to take another loss, you're not allowed to trade it. So it doesn't matter how likely I think it could be. Anything can happen, right? Trump can tweet something, and the market can drop 1,000 points, you know? But I did say if it comes back up to the same entry, it's even more likely than it was previously, and it's still a great trade. And second time was a charm. Came back up, and you got the beautiful breakout. You got all the pivots. You got all the things, and we are still running to this minute. So that's how the day ended with those TA setups. And keep in mind, just because I'm done trading, if there's clearly a TA setup on the chart, I'm going to send it to you guys. That way, if you're, a lot of you guys trade longer than I do, you guys can still take advantage of my analysis, and that's why I do send that out. But overall, it was a pretty good morning. I mean, it was a happy ending. Um, even the TA alert ended up playing out, and I did end up green on the day, despite going through absolute hell with those SPX contracts. It was really rough today. But with that being said, does anyone have any questions regarding any of the analysis or trades that I made this morning? No, everyone's good. All right, sweet. Well, like I said, I'm going to get back in the habit of doing these trade reviews, and I will post this on YouTube right now and let you guys know when it's done. And yeah, if you continue to trade, good luck. If you need anything, you know where to find me, DM me, or just ping me in my server. And yeah, I'll see you guys later.